for the Christian
Mhm.
that has to deal with this, if they're ever confronted by a Mormon
Mhm.
missionary, what are some tools, some basic things they need to know that they can know about Mormons and how they can combat
Yeah. So
teachings?
it's in a little book I brought called Preach My Gospel. And by the way, if anybody wants to, you can go on the LDS website. Uh, now it's churchofjesuschrist.org. You can also check out lds.org and download these books for free if you want to read them. Preach My Gospel is the Mormon Missionary Handbook. So it's important to know that they will tell you exactly what the missionary is going to say. You can go through their 5 lessons now that the Mormon will go through, and you can just look through this as a Christian and know word for word what the Mormon is going to say, because at those missionary training centers, they literally memorize this script.
Wow.
And it's either, and the only difference is whatever language they're going into would be the only difference, but it's word for word. So the most important thing to know is if a Mormon missionary comes to your door and he says, true Christianity was lost from the earth after the death of the last apostle, that is literally all he knows. If you were to say, prove that to me, Christianity was lost would be the answer. And if you keep pushing, you won't get anything else, because literally the only thing the Mormon missionary knows is what he memorizes. So the most important thing to remember is when a missionary comes to your door, so you get the knock at the door, and it's the 2 19-year-old boys from somewhere in the Mountain West, probably dark suits, white shirts, dark ties, and big name badges that say Elder Smith, and they're 19. Most important thing to know is they are not trained theologians. They've not been to Bible college. They've not been to seminary. They've memorized 5 lessons. They've memorized a script. The other important thing to remember is these are not the enemy, right? They're not Satan in the flesh. Now, because they're not believers, Satan is in control of their lives. Sin is in complete control. Satan is in control of them.
Right.
However, they need the gospel just as badly as we did before we were saved. The most important thing you can do with a Mormon missionary is be nice. Because Mormons are taught that non-Mormons will just slam the door in their face, want to kick them out, things like that, scream at them, say they're in a cult. You don't want to do any of that stuff. You want to be the person when the Mormon missionary leaves your porch or leaves your home or wherever it may be, parking lot if you meet them there, and you want the Mormon missionaries to walk away saying, goodness, all that guy talked about was Jesus. So the best thing we can do with a Mormon missionary or with any Mormon that might be a neighbor, whoever it might be, is to share the gospel. And I would say this for any world religion or any cult tradition, just share the gospel, but share it in a way that the person needs to hear it. Always share the full gospel, but again, in a way the person needs to hear it. So, for example, in Mormonism, temples are important and the priesthood is important. And by priesthood, I mean proper acting authority on behalf of God on the earth. So when I'm talking to a Mormon, I'm going to say things like, um, Jesus says he is our great high priest. The author of Hebrews says that he is the final prophet, priest, and king. So what's great about Jesus is by placing your faith and trust in Jesus, repenting of your sins, placing your faith and trust in Jesus and him alone, I don't need a human mediator between me and God, because Paul says Jesus is the one mediator between God and man. The author of Hebrews also says that the temple, that Jesus is the great high priest in the temple in the heavens. So if Jesus is our great high priest, if he holds true priesthood, and he is currently in the temple in the heavens mediating on our behalf, not only do I not need a physical human mediator, as a person, I also don't need a physical building to mediate between me and God. Because in the Old Testament, everything is physical. We have physical temples, physical food laws, physical circumcision. In the New Testament, all of those things become spiritual. We have spiritual food laws. We have spiritual circumcision, circumcision of the heart. It's not physical baptism, it's circumcision of the heart. We have a physical, or spiritual rather, great high priest in Jesus, in a spiritual heaven mediating on our behalf. So what I've just done is remove the need for the priesthood and remove the need for the temples, but I've never said Joseph Smith. I never said Brigham Young. I never said Book of Mormon. I never said you're in a cult. So it's following the example of Paul in Acts 17. When Paul talks to the Stoic and the Epicurean philosophers, every single phrase that he utters at the Areopagus in Acts 17 directly addresses either Stoicism or Epicureanism or both, but he never says Stoic or Epicurean, ever. What he does is presents the gospel in a way that scratches the itch, so to speak, of the Stoic and the Epicurean. So that's what I would say about Mormons. Know that they need the priesthood, know that they need physical priesthood, know they need physical temples. Address those things in your gospel presentation and fill it with grace, mercy, and forgiveness. Because look, having to do 20 things to be saved is not full of grace, it's not full of mercy, and it's the opposite of forgiving.
Yeah.
But we worship and serve a graceful, merciful, forgiving God. And it will be like a cold drink of water when you've been wandering through the desert for a year to a Mormon when you proclaim the gospel in that way.
Right. I imagine there's a lot of uncertainty amongst Mormons about their eternal
There
eternity.
is, in fact, a former president was asked, how many Mormons do you think will make it into the exalted level of the celestial kingdom? And he said, and I quote, we'll be doing good to get 10%.
Wow.
So they just basically have to hope. A lot of Mormons will say, I'll do my best and God will do the rest.
So basically,